Maybe we can start with a couple of introductions, the names on the board. I'll start with myself. I'm Steven Leunens. I'm co-CEO and founder of Meta. We are a company based in Belgium focusing on gaming and esports solely as a agency, so to speak, active almost 20 years in the field of esports. And with me, I've got some fantastic panelists. I'll start with Guillaume here to my left, so give you the rest of the audience a quick intro.
With pleasure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for staying. Hopefully, it will be interesting. I'm in charge of business development at EVS, and eSport is obviously a kind of new market in the media industry, and I will detail that further on later on.
Perfect. Freek?
I'm a founder of Kaiser and StrifeCloud. Kaiser we founded in 2016, which we grew to a local Benelux esports platform with over 150,000 players, which we sold recently, and now StrifeCloud focuses on putting mini Kaisers all over the world, platforms like these, and add gamification to applications.
Okay, Ralph?
Hello, I'm Rolf. I'm the head coach of League of Legends at KRC Genk, so the football club. And
yeah. Okay, and Greg, who's joining us in a minute, I'll make sure that he can do his introduction. Maybe, and I wanted to ask Greg this question, but since he's not here, I'll answer it myself. I wanted to give like a brief intro into the world of esports for some of you that might not know esports yet. Esports is a term that's used for competitive gaming. So whenever you play video games, you have video games at the center. You're playing against another human being using that technology. That's where esports is the term to just overarching. And there he is. There's Greg. So just jump on the stage. I was already answering your question. It was like, come on, jump on. There we go. So,
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Hello.
So just give yourself a quick intro to the house, and then yeah.
Hello, I'm Greg Carrette from the RTBF. I created RTBF XP 1 year ago. It's a media dedicated to video game, esports, and geek culture. So just before we create Tarmac, which is a kind of digital media, a kind of revolution in Belgium, because it was only digital, dedicated to urban culture. And with Tarmac, we tried to transform the RTBF with a really approach of the digital. And through Tarmac project, Tarmac Ciné Session, Tarmac online sessions, and then RTBF XP online session, we are involved in esports, not only traditional esports, but we try also to involve our sport department to take part in some sim racing and anything, but maybe we could talk about what is esport and what is not esport also.
Yeah, so one of the first questions, or one of the first elements is what is esport? So maybe you can take the first stab at it and then go, I would say not the experts in the room on the side, and then a technology partner coming into this space, which is a very interesting perspective we'll see. But Greg, for what is esports for you? Okay,
for me, esports is every competition on video games, which means it can be FIFA, for example, as we are here in a football place, I guess. It's also about sim racing, so Formula One and that kind of things. It could be volleyball or any sports, but it's also sports, esports about strategic, combat. It can be shooter. It can be a lot of things. So esports is not only about simulation of sports, it's every single competition on a video games. It could be in online, and it could be on LAN.
Yeah. And important against other people, so not against the computer. And I want to jump maybe quickly to your left, and Ralph, and to expand on that definition. You have the simulated sports, FIFA, Formula One, etc. A lot of people in the industry would claim they're not true esports because they're a simulation of something that already exists. And the true esports, we're talking more about the games like League of Legends, Counter-Strike. League of Legends just had its World Championship final. Counter-Strike is happening at the moment in Rio. But maybe, Ralph, you can explain a little bit what a more organic esports, what is that all about?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest problems esports at the moment faces is that it's so broad. So esports is a term that is used for a lot of different competitions. Well, if we look, for example, at football, we have for clear the Champions League, and everybody knows it. Even if you are not familiar with football, you are familiar with the term. And then we have the Europe Cup, and also in the region, you have your own competition. Esports works in the same way. However, people are less familiar with esports, so it's harder for them to understand at which level we are talking, because all the levels need the attention, and all levels needs a different kind of attention.
And jumping then to Frick, you've developed a software tool, a platform for specifically all gamers, not just esports, for a broader spectrum of gamers. Can you explain what for you is the platform and what you've built and how that came to be?
Well, for me, I think in terms of the experience, the end experience, I always, and now also going more towards sports with StriveCloud, not just esports, like we always make the division between the participation part and the viewership part. So if you go to the viewership, it's like the big arenas and you have like just a couple of players, like the top of the top playing it, big productions. And then the experience is more about like being in the stadium, feeling the thrill, like the stuff you've also organized in Antwerp recently. And then in terms of like the experience for participation, where we build software to make as many people play competitively as possible, making joggers into athletes is maybe the analogy that we try to do. It's more about having the thrill of competing, like really giving something an extra edge in your game because something depends on it. So I think there, indeed, it's like any game that that you can play competitively. That's true, and I do agree as well that esports is becoming quite big, so big and fragmented that it's becoming a bit of a hassle to see where is the value for what game, because it depends. But I also think what's many times overlooked is the differentiation between the participative part and the masses that participate, and then the masses that view esports.
And what role does technology play in that specific area?
Well, what we see now is, I think technology, of course, what's because we're also at a sports convention here, what's native to esports and to games is that like the mass participation part and like tracking every game is way easier in games. It's native. You can just retract any type of profound stat from a service.
Everything is there and it's abundant.
And like what you see in sports and also like, for example, you know it as well, having done productions, is that the complexity for a sport, you just need, like for football, you need a ball, you need a jersey, like an outfit and a goal, and you can play. With esports, you have like 10 PCs and everything can crash. You need an internet connection that's very stable, and apart from the complexity of the production, you really like the complexity there and the technology that goes in it. Yeah. Just for the sport itself is way higher than with any traditional sport.
And thank you for that segue, because that brings us directly to EVS, who came from outside of the world of esports, from the world of sport into the world of esports. How has that journey gone?
So for us, esport is primarily live. It resonates with live. It's a live event. It's a live competition. And it's very similar to traditional sport in the terms that it creates emotion, it's an entertainment, and it's all about, not knowing what will happen. And then every esport competition is a sport on its own. So Counter-Strike is a sport. League of Legends is a sport. So if we transfer that to the traditional sport, actually. So each game is its own sport at the end. It's different rules, different practice, different set of rules, and everything. And all this live component at the end, like in traditional sport, needs to be transmitted to the fans and the viewers. And depending on how you will do that, you will reach your goal to transmit this emotion, this uncertainty, this passion to the audience.
And is that easier or more difficult in esports than in traditional sports?
No, it's as easy as in traditional sport, or as complex as in traditional sport at the end. It's all about how you will create your story and how you will transfer this emotion to the public. The main difference is that the category of people will not consume the content the same way in traditional sport and in esport, despite the fact that if you are in an arena, actually is very similar to traditional sport. A basketball game in an arena will have an atmosphere. You will have fans screaming and yelling and everything. If you go to ESL 1 in Cologne, I can assure you that you will have your hairs resting in your skins.
The same in the Counter-Strike Major now in Rio with the Brazilian team reaching the quarterfinals. It's an insane atmosphere. Greg, from a media perspective, because we're talking about consuming media and potentially also the technology behind it, how have you seen that evolve over the past years of where it used to be just a linear channel where you push content, you have a studio, you produce it, it's fairly straightforward, and then having the experience with Tarmac and now with XP, driven by gaming, driven by esports, how has that changed?
Different steps, I guess. It was before COVID. It was how to give the most beautiful, spectacular program in the venue and also behind the computers. And actually, the audience in the venue was the luckiest one, because behind the screen was not so amazing, not often. And then the COVID came, and then the only choice for esport was to be the amazing thing behind the computer, behind the screen. And we told about the Worlds, and I can remember all the venue of the Worlds in China was just amazing. It was XR, VR, AR at the same time. It was just a blast. There's this place in the middle of the clouds with dragons. It was just amazing. And nowadays we need to find a good balance between the venue and behind the screen, I guess. So maybe it's the fine balance we need to find.
And I think in one of the games that is very relevant, that balance, and where technology is pushing the edge, I think, is in League of Legends. If you watch the World Championships, augmented reality has been a big part of it for a couple of years already. So can you walk the audience here through a typical World's final? How does this look? Is this simply 5 people sitting behind a PC on one end and 5 on the other, playing a game, and people in the stadium just watching them play from afar, and that's it? Or what is the experience for a fan there in real life?
I think we learned a lot from traditional sports, because if you now look at most of the esports, how a competition starts, how a match, there's so much build-up, like the same as for a traditional sport like football. You have the pre-show, in which we go over all the stats of all the players, and it's really accessible for everyone. It's also understandable because these stats are actually reproducible for players at home. Besides the pre-shows, there's a lot of content. For example, World Championships of League was in New York this year, and they had Lil Nas. So they had a big opening show, as they would do, for example, for a Super Bowl. And afterwards, the players start. But before we get to that point, we are already 3 hours in. And then we only count the pre-show and not even the shows before. And then the match starts, and in between the matches are analyses and like so much going on. But it's a lot of fun.
And also for a fan in the stadium, you have the big, like you mentioned, the big dragons coming into the screen, and all these types of technology that have been injected into a final that we are now starting to show in World Cups and Olympic Games, but have been part of esports for several years already.
There is actually a big difference for if you are in the arena itself or if you are viewing at home, and both are powered by technology. Because in the arena you have the atmosphere, you have the ambience of the lights, of the people. But if you are at home, you mostly have Twitch chat, for those familiar with it. Not that's always a great thing, but you have it. So that's a way in which technology binds a group together that watches online. So both parties experience the same competition, the same match, but in a totally different way, and both have their charms.
Yeah, and I think from a live perspective, esports is really driving technology and opening it up to a large audience, I would imagine, looking at the numbers.
So for me, what is important to understand is the fact that actually we see more and more the esport community or market adopting broadcast quality production, actually. And even if at the beginning they started with pure digital distribution, free-to-air, and so on, now we see that, and not only now, but for several years already, they did improve a lot the production, the effort they were putting in the production, because actually they had to match what you will feel in the arena and provide that in the outside and in front of your screen looking at Twitch. And in order to achieve that, actually they learn from the traditional sport. They use the same technique of production with replay, slow motion. We started to see slow motion on Counter-Strike 6 years ago already, because it's moving very fast and enjoying a headshot, a very nice headshot, it goes very fast. And without a replay, without slow-mo, for example, you miss the point. So you can come back to that. It offers the opportunity to casters to comment, the observers to place the camera wherever they want in the field of play. And all that contributed in the storytelling and to entertain the people behind the screen. And obviously, the biggest part of the viewers are behind the screen.
You want to?
Yeah, we were talking about Twitch. I'd love us also to speak about Ovio on VRT Noon, VRT Max, and all the digital players from the European broadcaster, which are not ready at all for esports, because we're still working with the television norms. We are working with the 25 frames per second. On eSport, we are on 60 frames per second. We are talking about the 120. Even we reduced maybe the definition for energetical stuff. We must keep that 60 frames per second, but all that digital player from the broadcaster are not ready for this. And it's an issue. It's a real issue. 3-4 years ago, we were at the Charleroi Sport with a VS, and we transformed an all car ready with a VS to have 60 frames per second on progressive and not on interlaced. Maybe it's too technical, but it's true. And when you put a signal 60 frames per second on progressive and you put on 25 in interlaced, it's just awful. You can't see anything, any details. You can't. Maybe with Rocket League, you can. What? League of Legends, it's impossible.
So many details on the screen that you need to know. Like there's, to put it in perspective, if you're watching a League of Legends match, there's about, I would estimate about 100 data points on your screen at all times that are relevant to the game. So in a football match, it's the score and how many minutes are left. And then it's the people on the screen. In League of Legends match, it's the people on the screen and 100 data points of, okay, is the Elder Dragon coming? Is it, and how many gold is that? And which items did this guy buy? And it's a very complex thing. But bridging the gap between esports and traditional sports or traditional industry, I think, and Freek, maybe you can comment on that. We're also seeing more traditional people come into the esports world to learn from it and to see that an industry that is driven or is driven by gamers, is driven by large numbers, can actually demonstrate some value as well. And gamification in the platform that you've built with Strive Cloud is, I think, a big bonus of how people can go from A to Z.
Yeah.
using esports.
Again, there you have the commercial side, of course. Like for example, Henk adopting an esports team. That's a side thing. But then again, I come back to, and I see it a lot, like the viewership part and the participation part. Like we work together with clubs, football clubs like Antwerp, to gamify their fan experience in the app, to have get people a more online, real-time experience, engaging with the matches and all these things, which come straight from gaming. These things, but also, for example, with the international federations, and that's something that's really interesting. Like classic sports now with like iPhones having like a LiDAR scanner which can scan the depth of things. Like you can put AI and depth of AI on an iPhone camera. You can, with 2 cameras pointing at a field, you can get as many data points as you would get out of the game. So esports is now mainly investing into, okay, with all these data points, how can we do scouting better? How can we do training better? And you already see AIs arising. And I think within like the sensors for sports that are necessary for the data capture, they're a step behind, but they will be very much able to learn from esports and what they're learning at this point, and then reusing that, stealing a little bit from esports to really go and change the game in scouting and making sure that if we have not 1 but 2 or 3 Kevin De Bruyne's playing in the same generation, that we don't lose them, because you see the patterns and all these things. So it can really change the game, and I think sports can really benefit from the stuff that's already been learned in esports years before.
Yeah, and commenting on that one, there's a partnership I just want to toss in there between SAP and Team Liquid. It's been going on for about 4 or 5 years. It's a multi-million-dollar contract where they sponsor the team, and they're doing it for one particular reason, and it's business development. So they're developing tools together with one of the largest esports teams in the world to try and understand the industry better and what they could learn from it. Because like we mentioned before, esports has all those data points. It's digital. Everything, those 100 points that you see in League of Legends, you can access them at any time using APIs. You can use that data. You can showcase it. You can do a lot of things with it. And scouting is probably one aspect of that. But maybe even on a local level, KRC Genk has a League of Legends team, but you're a coach for that team. There's also scouting involved into building the best team, of course. How much of that is done through technology, analyzing data and analyzing those data sets that you have available?
That's a good question. It's kind of weird because we started off with with websites that do the scouting for you. So there are a lot of websites in which you can see ranking of players, like stats of players. And we did not really have agents. So agents that we are used to in traditional sports like football. And the times are changing, and we put less time and energy in scouting by website or like just the ranking. And we get more approached by agents. So the agents are coming from traditional sports. Like there are football agents that are just transitioning into agents for the game because they know how to approach and they know what we are looking for. Because the thing with esports is you have all the data, and we learned how to work with it. And that does not mean that we always have the human component. Well, sports is the other way around. So it's really a nice intersection.
Yeah, and I'm conscious of time, and everybody wants to head on off home or get a beer. Yeah, probably drink a beer. So we're going to close it off. So I'm going to ask just one quick fire question to everyone to summarize. Where do you think esports can impact from a technology perspective traditional sports, as quickly or as summarized as you can?
A lot, a lot, because we mentioned the fact that esports use traditional broadcast quality to enhance the storytelling. But yes, indeed, the traditional sport can definitely benefit from esports. And the first thing is simple: is about how to entertain a digital native generation. Esport is very good at that, and that's why I believe traditional sport is so envious toward the esport. And I think it's based on the fact that esport is all about a community, but also a virtual world. Every game provider, developer, create a community around their sport or their game, okay? traditional sport have the community, but they don't have the virtual world. And that's why they are they're investing so much in metaverse. And the earlier panel about NFT, if you look at esports, actually they are doing NFT for a long time, because when you buy a skin, it's NFT.
Exactly, yeah.
I think, again, in a viewership point of view, like esports will always lead the way of traditional sports on making the viewership more interactive in any type of way, if it's AR, if it's polls, if it's chat, if it's whatever. And on the participative side, I think with the lead that esports has in data points, sports will catch up there. But again, like really optimizing the grassroots is something that also esports will be able to help a lot. Be able to help traditional sports a lot the coming 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I already agree with the previous two, but to add a new point, I think that training is a very important aspect, because esports came up so quickly that there are no set training methods. So if you're a new player or a team, how do you prepare? How do you go to the next? We have a lot of analysts, so we know what the weaknesses are, but we are not used to training for the specific point. Well, traditional sports has that, so we can learn from that and how they use technology now to train better.
And to close off, Greg?
Yeah, complicated. They tell everything. No, I agree 100% about the interactivity and the immersive way of the esports. It helps to give the people custom POV, for example. Nowadays, if you just follow one player, you can follow just one player with some LOL esports. Propose that kind of project, because it's money also. That's, I guess, a really important way. And maybe esports could show how to change the rules. I mean, with technique, we could change some rules on classical sports. I mean, maybe tennis, for example, with bonus, with malus coming from the technical. It's just like an idea, but maybe to give some forgotten sport by the young generation, help them to be more interactive and some gamification on it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to my panel, Guillaume, Freek, Ralph, and Greg. And thank you everyone here.